will go through. Welcome to our West Bloomfield School District Classroom to Cloud Framework. We're excited to be able to welcome all of you tonight and to share our information as we begin to look towards fall 2020 and what that may be for us. So at this time, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Jerry Hill, our Superintendent of Schools.
Thank you, Deanna. As Deanna said, I'm Jerry Hill, Superintendent in the West Bloomfield School District, and we are pleased to have, looks like around 425 to 430 people joining us this evening. So we know that our topic is really highly interesting. One of the things I want to say before I introduce people is I want to just compliment the team of people that you're going to meet this evening. I feel we have an incredibly talented, resourceful, dedicated, and innovative group of leaders within the school district. And when I say leaders, it covers all ranks, from central office to principals to teachers and support staff. And it's just an honor to serve alongside this talented group of people. On the next slide, I'll be able to introduce to you the people who will be presenting this evening. And Deanna, you can go to slide number 2. So we have myself. I'm going to be mostly listening and watching the presentation and making note of the communications. This will be the first of many opportunities that families will have, parents will have, to take a look at what we're proposing. Our intent is to share our thinking with you this evening and to get your thoughts and feedback, and then we will be obviously building our plan more fully as we proceed through the next several weeks. With us this evening, you're going to hear from Kyle Anderson. He's our Assistant Superintendent of Finance and Operations. You've met Deanna Barish. She's our Assistant Superintendent for Teaching and Learning, and she has done an outstanding job leading her team through the really tumultuous times that we've had in terms of turning our education world upside down, if you will. One of the people that works with Deanna, Catherine Law, she's responsible for K-12 assessment, instruction, and technology, as well as our social studies coordinator for the school district. And we have Amy Quinn. She's our K-12 math and science coordinator and advanced programming coordinator. And then we have Gianna Taylor. She's the K-12 English Language Arts, MTSS, multi-tiered system of support, and school improvement coordinator. And then we have our Assistant Superintendent, Eric Whitney. He's Assistant Superintendent for Talent Development and Management. And then not on the screen, but assisting with this process, we have Dan Durkin. He's in charge of our public relations and marketing for the school district. And so I'd like to thank all these panelists and once again, welcome our 468 guests at this time. So Deanna, we can turn it over to our next presenter.
Thank you, Dr. Hill. At this time, I will turn it over to Ms. Quinn, who will walk us through our next part.
So tonight, we're actually going to be using Zoom webinar, and it might be slightly different than what you're used to. So I'm just going to go over a few things. Since we're using Zoom webinar, it's a good thing since we have so many participants. All participants have been muted. And at the bottom of your screen, you're going to notice a button called Q&A. So if you could please put your questions in there. It might be that you're unable to see other questions that are in there, but we can see everything, and that's being constantly monitored. All questions will be recorded, and also this Zoom is being recorded. Please save your questions until the end of the presentation. As we go along, you might find that one of your questions has been answered. And we're not using the raise hand option tonight. All right, so we're glad you're here, and now we're ready to begin our Classroom to Cloud Framework presentation.
Thank you, Amy. So I'll get to start this evening. As Dr. Hill mentioned, we really have been hard at work, as many of you know, since we started in March with our long-term closure. And several years ago, just a little more than 2 years ago, actually, we developed something called the District Learning Design Team. And this is a group of people listed below on your screen who've been instrumental in bringing the Portrait of a Graduate, which hopefully many of you know about and have seen on our website, and then the actions of our students have been bringing the Portrait of a Graduate to life within the district. So that team very quickly in March had to really pivot and begin to think differently about what our purpose was, which became how to bring cloud learning to all of our students within West Bloomfield. And I have to tell you that this team met on March the 11th. And if you remember, our last day of school ended up being March the 12th. We took a snow day to plan on March the 13th. So on March the 11th, in a matter of just 3 hours, this team was able to develop our cloud learning initiative, to work on parent communication, to develop the professional development that our teachers needed, to figure out a way to provide technology to our families. And it is truly an amazing team. And then just a few short weeks ago, we asked the team to once again pivot and begin to think about what our options might be for fall 2020. And I think we want to clarify something that perhaps has been slightly misconstrued in the media as this word has gotten out, and we have certainly enjoyed being able to be a forefront and be a forerunner in all of this. We are going to do whatever the Michigan Department of Education or the governor tells us that we need to do in the fall. So if indeed on August 26th, we're able to open our doors no differently than any other school year because it's safe for students to return and staff to return, then that's exactly what we'll do. But we also did not want to leave this for the summer without a plan so our staff and families could have some peace of mind that no matter what the decisions are coming forward in August, that we had a plan in place. So I believe there's some misconception that we're going with our blended learning plan, or we're only going to do remote learning, and none of that is true. It will be responsive to whatever the order is from the governor or from the Michigan Department of Education. If indeed we can start school on August 26th with 30 kids in class and full school buses and sports and cafeteria, then that's exactly what we will do. But we also know that might not happen. And we wanted to leave for the summer with plans in place so that no matter what curveball was thrown our way, we were ready to go. And once again, this team has managed to rise to the challenge and has developed a 3-option approach in order to make sure that our students here in West Bloomfield continue to be able to learn and to grow within the school system. I just wanted to take a minute to highlight some of our work from the spring. This is a really cool app that we have been able to utilize that pulls the hashtags from our Twitter account. And so as you can see, not only were our teachers and our students, and quite frankly, our community and parents vested in our cloud learning initiative, we have seen some exciting teaching and a lot of kids engaging with our teachers every single day. And I have to give a huge shout out and certainly our word of thanks to our teachers and our staff and our principals. No matter what we've asked them to do, no matter what examples we've given them, no matter what new challenges we've thrown their way, Zoom, Google Classroom, Screencastify, making sure we're running small group instruction, no matter what we've asked, they've been able to do it. So thank you to all of our staff and to our teachers. Additionally, we have to thank our parents. Those of you who went to work on March the 13th and then didn't go back to work on March the 16th and suddenly became full-time work at home and teachers, we appreciate you making sure your students continue to be engaged and learning throughout the last couple of months. I know it is difficult and I know it's hard to manage all those pieces of our lives, but you've done an outstanding job making sure your kids are there for us every single day. So we wanted to highlight some of our things from this spring. And I also know that we're tired. We're ready for the end of the school year, but we are very proud of all the work we've been able to accomplish and all the things that we've done for our students here in the district. At this time, I'm going to turn it over to Kyle Anderson, who's going to talk a little bit about probably something that's on many of your minds as we think about what is safe and how we're going to make sure that our students and staff are safe when they return. So Kyle, turning it over to you.
Thank you, Deanna. As Deanna or Dr. Hill mentioned, my name is Kyle Anderson. I'm the Assistant Sup for Finance and Operations. And the word operations really means food service, transportation, custodial, maintenance, all the support services that school districts have in place. And really our role as operations is to follow along, follow Deanna's team and support the instructional program that may be in place in the fall. So to that end, we have created a task force of very capable and caring professionals, our food service director, our maintenance director, transportation, and with the simple goal of keeping our students and staff safe. We want to avoid the spread of COVID in all of our buildings. And we are just actually got some guidance from the CDC that's helping our task force immensely as we work through some of our challenges. And things that we are looking at, health screening for students and staff. Some of the recommendations from the CDC are quite clear and common sense, really, that if someone is sick, that we want them to stay home. Social distancing, of course, which will be a challenge, but we have some ideas on how to tackle that, particularly on a school bus. That's going to be interesting. Certain barriers in place in high traffic areas. And so we're working through all that with this task force. We do want to stress that, we don't have all of the answers yet. As Deanna mentioned, we did want to have a plan in place before the summer break and be able to communicate that with all of our parents. I do believe that our food service plan is probably complete, and we will add it to our document and share it with our families and put it on our website. As I said, I think the transportation questions are a little bit more challenging, but we will work through them and come up with solutions to keep our students and staff safe. So it's kind of a summary of what our plans are. And I don't know, Eric, if you wanted to add anything to that. Eric Whitney is our Assistant Superintendent for Talent and Development.
Thank you, Kyle. So as we start to get into our return to school roadmap, I think the word roadmap is really important. I like to use the word framework, and the team teases me a little bit because I think that's a really good description of what we're trying to offer here. It's not that we know, as Kyle said, every single detail that we will be faced with in August, but we think it's important that we have a very comprehensive outline of the issues that we need to tackle, of the things that will be important, and that we touch on several different areas. And I know this evening we're going to spend a lot of time talking about what that instructional programming looks like. After all, we are schools, we're here to educate, we care a lot about the education of our kids, and so do you. But there are a whole host of components that go into this roadmap, this framework in our mind, in addition to that instructional programming. The instruction is really going to drive some of these other ideas, but they are very important topics that we need to talk about. So we're talking about governance and policies. What does our Board of Education need to adopt in terms of policies that will help guide our schools? What will our policy be on, for example, visitors in our building? What will our policies be when a student comes to school and is sick? How will we respond to that? What policies will we have in place to support our employees that may become ill? All sorts of considerations at that very high governance level that we want to talk about. We are also thinking a lot about health and wellness, of course. What are things that we can put in place that will keep our employees healthy, that will keep our students safe, that will help reduce the spread of germs? You know that schools are very challenging. Kids put their hands on each other, those little ones. And I was an elementary principal, so I've lived with that for many, many years. And that is on the forefront of our mind. You may see things in place, for example, when you come into the main office. There may be a sneeze guard between you and the school secretary. Those are measures that we think we need to look at to help our employees stay healthy as well. Of course, instructional priorities, we're going to spend a lot of time talking about what those kinds of programs look like this evening. Facilities and operations, we know that's on everyone's mind. Our teachers talk to us about this, our principals, our parents speak a lot about how do you ensure that the buildings are clean? How will you sanitize? How will you make sure that you're implementing all the practices you need to? Of course, talent development and management, that's near and dear to my heart. I work a lot on that with our employees. And how do we support them through this very difficult time? It's a whole new way of teaching for them. They've never experienced that. They never really thought it would be like this. and they've made a lot of adjustments to do that. How do we make sure that their social and emotional health is protected as well and strengthened throughout this? We have lots of technology considerations. We were very fortunate, of course, in West Bloomfield that we are a one-to-one district and that we had a lot of that technology deployed, but we also learned when this began on March 16th that we had some thinking to do about getting technology in everyone's hands, making sure that all of our students have equitable access to technology. Stakeholder communication is very important to us. So what is our communication out to our community, to our families, to our public? Also, what are the avenues that we can establish for them to communicate back to us? Give us feedback about our ideas. Let us know what kinds of things they're thinking about. We know many parents that are very nervous about sending their kids back to school. So how can we provide programming that meets their needs as well? And then, of course, professional learning for our staff, because we are asking them to do all new things. We ask them to do that very, very quickly. As Deanna said, I definitely agree that our staff has risen to the occasion. And as we build our framework and roadmap, that is a very critical component for us, is supporting our teachers to be able to facilitate quality learning in a very different kind of environment, maybe hybrid, maybe online, maybe back at school. We will see. So that's kind of sets up the rest of the presentation and kind of our thinking about how that framework and roadmap will be coming together.
Thank you, Mr. Whitney and Mr. Anderson. We're going to move on now, and Gianna will walk us through those 3 plans that we've begun to develop.
So I'm going to take you through a quick overview of the 3 options, and then we'll take some time to dive a little bit more deeply into each one. But like Deanna said, obviously, if we can return to school in the fall as normal, that is what we would prefer. That would just be the best option, I think. But given circumstances, and if we can't, we want to be prepared for various scenarios. And so that's what we've begun to plan for. So our first plan would be if it was per CDC or executive order guidelines that we would need to be in a blended model. So that would be part of the time in person, part of the time remote. And so we've started to think about what are the needs and considerations in each of these plans. And so if in our blended plan, we have to determine our instructional model. So what will that look like for teachers and for students? We'd need to enact any safety protocols based on the CDC guidelines, which were recently released yesterday, actually, I think. We're working on creating building schedules at elementary and secondary. We'll talk a little bit later about our options for childcare or camps. So what will happen to students on the days that they aren't in school in person, but they have parents who are working. Very shortly, probably next week, you'll be receiving a survey because we would like to gauge your interest in the options. So many of you have already told us that you're not comfortable sending your students back to school in the fall in person. And so we kind of want to get a number, what we're thinking, what you're thinking on that, so that we can begin to plan. And with all of this, we'll need to provide learning, professional development to our teachers around this instructional model, how to best use technology tools, and we're going to be moving away from Google Classroom to a new learning management system called Canvas, and Amy will talk about that in a little while. So we'll also, and we need to add this to our list, we'll also want to provide you and your students with some training on how to use this system so that it's clear to everyone. Plan B is if we're under some kind of stay-at-home order again, that would be remote learning for everyone. And so many of the same things would be in place, we just wouldn't be in person. And then Plan C is for those of you who do not feel comfortable coming back in person in the fall. We need to think about what that would look like. How similar or different might that be from a blended model? We need to determine the structure. So who will teach that? How will they teach that? And so the survey that you'll get probably next week will ask you for those kinds of things.
Perfect, thank you, Gianna. So I'm going to talk a little more in depth about the very first roadmap that she described, which is a description of our blended model. And I want to be clear, and I'm not sure I can say this enough times. So if I feel like a broken record, that is my intention. These things are just a framework at this point in time. Nothing is set in stone. Everything certainly can change based upon an executive order, based upon our needs or your needs or information that we receive between now and August 26th. But as of today, our thinking is that we would have a weekly schedule designed as such. So Mondays and Tuesdays, we would have in-person instruction for approximately 50% of the students, while the other 50% of the students would be participating in remote learning. On Wednesdays, we would have remote learning for all students. And then on Thursdays and Fridays, there would be in-person instruction for approximately 50% of the students. Those who had been at home on Monday and Tuesday will return and be in person on Thursday, Friday, and vice versa. And let me talk a little bit about why we came up with this schedule so you have some understanding. Monday and Tuesday of the same group of kids allows us to have continuity of learning. So we would have 2 solid days of in-person instruction. And we've already begun to talk with teachers about the importance of being very purposeful and intentional about bringing students back into the school. So what are they going to learn and what are they going to be experiencing in those 2 days? Wednesdays would be remote learning for all students because it would allow us to deep clean those classrooms and those common areas and the buildings as we transition students. We know, and maybe less so now, we're hearing maybe perhaps things don't get transferred as much from surface to surface, but as we know, information around COVID has changed weekly. And so we want to make sure that we can make sure that our students are safe. And so on Wednesdays, everyone would learn remotely. If you think about our Friday model right now, where our teachers are participating in staff meetings and where they are participating in their professional learning communities and doing their planning, it would be very similar to that now, but there would be instructional pieces for you to do on those Wednesdays. And then Thursday and Friday would be regular in-person instruction. So that's the model that we're considering at this point in time. What we don't know, and what I can't tell you to the building right now, is what that teacher schedule will look like. I can't tell you exactly whether they'll be looping, so teachers following their students from this year to next year. There are lots of decisions that the principals who are working tirelessly to think about this model that we'll be sharing with you in the coming weeks. But I can tell you that right now, this is the model that we're considering for the fall if we have to return in some sort of socially distanced model. If indeed you read the CDC guidelines for schools that were released yesterday, you would see that it says students should be at least 6 feet apart, that it be smaller group, that they don't move, students don't move, that teachers come to them, that anything that is touched needs to be cleaned every single time. That can only be done. All of those things can only be done if we only have a portion of the students in person on any given day. And that is where this model really has come from. Something that's very important to us is that we know that students have gaps in their learning. That certainly our teachers, as we've said, have done an excellent job in the last few months teaching remotely, but there were students who had probably gaps in their learning when they walked out the door on March the 12th. And so we're devising ways and considering ways to give students who need that extra instructional support the opportunity to be in person another day. So what might that look like without throwing them back into that general education setting with the rest of the class? We have to maintain those same kind of ratios of adults to children. So we're working on that as well. And the other is considering whether our self-contained programs for our special needs students or other self-contained programs could potentially meet 4 days a week. So because their ratios are already smaller and fall within those CDC guidelines, they would be able to attend, we believe, 4 days a week. So we're working on those considerations as well. Again, we don't have all of these answers written in stone, but I've been very, very lucky to work with such a team that is always thinking and finding ways to make sure that we are serving our students the best we possibly can. And so I think that we will have a better plan, a more developed plan as we go through this process in the next couple of weeks. The next piece that we're going to talk a little bit about is the Instructional Roadmap C. And I think that this has probably been the one that we've had quite a bit of feedback already, and we will continue to do so. As Gianna mentioned, there will be a parent survey, a family survey that goes home next week. And one of those questions that we're going to ask you is, where are you leaning as a family right now? If indeed we cannot return to school, right now we would return to school as normal. If we cannot do that, which of these options would best meet your needs as a family? And so we've already had communication with a number of you who've said, I'm not comfortable sending my child back to school until there's better testing opportunities, until there's a vaccine. And so could we consider remote learning only, which is exactly what Roadmap C is. The really great thing about remote learning only in West Bloomfield is it's our West Bloomfield teachers delivering the curriculum, that there are supplemental materials to support those core subjects. So for instance, if you chose to do remote learning only, you would receive a take-home bag, not only your Chromebook with your login for Canvas and all those instructional, you would also receive things like math manipulatives, supports for science, additional reading supplementals, books that you can take home and use with your child. So there are additional supports that would come along with this remote learning, not just what occurs on the computer. You'd have access to our West Bloomfield specials, so PE, art, music, elective courses across the board, and that there will be multiple opportunities for live instruction. Our teachers, again, have become experts at Zoom, as I'm sure you have as well, and so we would continue to do that. We've also begun to explore our new tool will allow for live streaming. And so a teacher might indeed be in a classroom within the school district, but able to live stream their lesson, and a student at home would be able to watch it and participate. So there will be multiple opportunities that even if you chose and felt most comfortable with your child learning from home, there will be opportunity for two-way communication, interaction, and to see one of our teachers live and in person, just from the safety of your own home. So remote learning as a standalone option will be there no matter what. So even if we are able to return to school as normal in the fall, there are still families who are not comfortable. We will continue with that remote learning only option for our families. So we want you to be clear about that as well. At this time, I'm going to turn it over to Catherine, who's going to talk a little bit about our professional development model for our teachers as we think about all these changes.
Thank you, Deanna. Teaching and Learning has developed a comprehensive plan to prepare teachers for possible blended and remote learning. Our professional learning plan equips teachers with the necessary skills and strategies to be successful this fall. This summer, teachers will be working on a competency-based instructional model, instructional technology, including our new learning management system, Canvas, social emotional learning strategies, and content-specific skills required for high-quality teaching and learning.
Thank you, Catherine. So as she said, obviously we have a lot of work to do to help with the planning. Our teachers have a lot to do to think about how they can continue to grow in their practice, and they're very excited, really, about learning their professional development differently as well. So their professional development, unlike in years past where they came in the first few days before school started, this will be done online as well, so that we're modeling for them and they're modeling then for their students. Exactly what it's going to look like to learn either remotely or in a blended opportunity as well. So we're excited about being able to enact this professional learning plan. At this time, Amy Quinn's going to talk about our technology and a little bit about this tool we've been mentioning that we recently adopted. So Amy?
So as part of the Classroom to Cloud framework, we're looking at student, staff, and family technology needs. Ideas on how we can best support high quality remote learning would include the following: purchasing additional Chromebooks, possibly investigating maybe a tablet option for K1, or just really thinking about their needs as learners, additional Wi-Fi hotspots to ensure accessibility, and we will continue to identify relevant, engaging tools like you see on Google Classroom. Teachers are using Padlet, Flipgrid, Zoom, and we want to identify tools that support innovative best practices and also work side by side with teachers and families to support any technology needs. So yes, we are very excited about moving to a new learning management system called Canvas. We use feedback from the district learning design team, feedback from teachers, and also feedback from parent surveys to research a platform that would really meet the needs for our school community. The other day, we had a time where we showed teachers an example of Canvas, and they were very pleased. Some things they liked included the ease of use, seamless integration of Google Classroom, Zoom, Google Slides, videos, use of rubrics, and especially the different ways feedback can be given to students. Canvas is a top integrator with Google Chrome and PowerSchool. So staff will be fully trained on Canvas, but we will also have parent training for anyone that'll be interested. And on this slide right here, you can see a nice feature of Canvas is an app that is available This is an example from a parent view on the left. This would be the app of a middle schooler and high schooler example. And you can see how easy it is to really view the specific classes. The other two examples, this might be how Canvas would look to an elementary or middle school student. So many options and many more details to come.
Thank you, Amy. So we're excited about being able to adopt this tool. We definitely heard feedback from parents as well, especially if you had more children in multiple buildings, that Google Classroom, while had many great features, people loaded things in differently. The stream was a little confusing. And so we feel like this will streamline. Your children will all be linked into the same platform and into the same dashboard so you can see everything. So we're excited to be able to bring this to all of you in the fall, and more information to come about our parent night so you can begin to use it as well. A question that we've heard a lot about, and we started to think about very early in this process, that if indeed we had to go into a blended learning situation, is what would we do for families who need to return to work? We recognize that it is important that everyone have the opportunity to have childcare as part of that option, and that you need to be able to return to work and not have to worry that your child is safe and well taken care of, even if they're not in regular classroom each and every day. So we are very fortunate to have Laura Poxon, who is our Early Childhood and Kids Club Director, and Joey Spano, who is our community ed director, who began to work with us very early to determine what we are calling the Cloud Care Child Plan. And you might know that today we sent an email to our families via school messenger to our K-7 families about your needs for next year. And so we're beginning very early, not expecting you to know exactly what you're going to need, but beginning to think about if this is an option or when this is an option, what would you need in order to be able to take advantage of this? So at this point in time, our Cloud Care students would be available for all students in kindergarten through 8th grade. I'm not sure how many 8th graders we'll have that'll want to take part in this, or that you'll want them to, but it certainly will be an option as we begin to survey you and your needs. We will have opportunities at this point in time, we believe, at a north end and a south end location where we might be able to service your students during the day. The cloud times will be from 6:45 in the morning till 6:30. So really very typical of regular kids club, except it will go all day long. Regular Kids Club will take place in your home school no differently than it has in the past. It will certainly come with some different regulations and stipulations and ratios than perhaps it has in the past. They will be under, I know this was a question I had seen earlier in something that I was reading, they will be expected to go through the same health screenings as all the rest of our staff and our students. So as we develop those protocols about how do we keep kids safe that are going to Kids Club or to Cloud Care, there'll be the same safety protocols that we put in place when they walk back into the school. So making sure that we identify students who are symptomatic, that we have a place to isolate if need be, we have a communication plan for parents as well. What we also know is important, especially in the economic environment that we find ourselves in now, is that we need to make sure that it's affordable for our families. So the max cost that we have at this moment, and this actually could change, is the maximum fee would be, at this time, would be $25 per day. And so you would have the flexibility if you needed both days or you only needed one day, and it is a sliding scale. So the top any one family would pay would be $25 per day, and it would be a sliding scale based upon income. And so we're working to develop a way to register, to get that information, payment options, and those sorts of things as well. I also wanted to show you a sample schedule of what a day might look like in the Cloud Care environment. So we know that it's important. Obviously, if they're not in-person school, they still need time to have that interaction remotely, so that that teacher may still have a Zoom they need to be a part of. There may still be small group instruction taking place. There may be a number of things that students need to do. So there will be built-in time within that Cloud Care schedule for students to participate in cloud learning, to log in, to make sure they take attendance, to interact with their teacher. There'll also be the very standard things that happen during Kids Club, which is now Childcare on these days, where there's arts and crafts, there's time for physical activity, there's time to read, all those sorts of things. Breakfast and lunch will be taken care of by the district, meaning it'll be provided by food service. And so we've already begun to work with food service about what that will look like. Again, following those same protocols that will be in place if a child is in a classroom as well. And there will be we have places designated along with smaller ratios so that students can be kind of maintained and not have, for lack of a better word, cross-contamination. You know, part of the CDC recommendation is that our students have to stay together because they don't get exposed and they're not exposed to other people outside that small group. We will be able to do that with Childcare. And again, it's been a pleasure to work with both Joey and Laura and to see their thinking about how this will work when we come back into the fall, because we know this is a concern for our families. We know that we have to go back to work in order to be able to restart the country. And so we felt that it was important that if we have to go to blended learning, that we would have an option for childcare that was affordable and accessible to our families. And so right now, this is the framework that we're using. Again, subject to change as we get more information, or if we find other things that we need to think about differently. But right now, we at least have a pretty solid frame of what that would look like if we would have to go into a cloud learning environment. We have been making sure and really working to make sure that our stakeholders are involved in this process, that they understand where we are and are thinking behind what we're doing, and then seeking that two-way feedback. And so these are some examples of what we've done to make sure that our staff are aware, obviously that our students' impact and their feelings about cloud learning thus far and what we might change for the fall have been addressed, and certainly what your families as families and the impact this is going to have on you and the things that you need. We're doing that as well. So we held 4 staff informational sessions last week. We had probably averaging between 75 and 100 staff members each time. So they have heard this very same presentation and had the opportunity to ask questions and to indicate to us what their concerns are. We also had them complete a staff survey last week. And in that survey, we had teachers and staff members indicate their preferences as we consider this as well. Like many of you, or like at least some of you, we have staff members who are concerned about returning to the building. And we wanted to make sure that we had an understanding of their preference. And if there was a need for them to continue to teach remotely, we want to make sure that we're able to accommodate that as well. We also did a student survey the week before last that really was meant for our rising high school students, so current 8th graders through 11th graders. And we had a great response. We asked for what has gone well, what has not gone well. If we needed to continue some sort of model like this in the fall, what should we do differently? We also asked the students to indicate their willingness to participate in a student focus group. So next Wednesday, the 27th, we have a variety of students who will be participating in some small group dialogue with all of us and the high school and middle school administrators. And we'll take their feedback. We'll spend time, they'll see this presentation. We'll spend time with each of them, asking some questions, getting their ideas, probably their concerns, and then beginning to move forward in our planning at that point in time as well. Obviously, we have this parent committee information session this evening, and we have one again tomorrow at 10 a.m. So if people were not unable to attend tonight, they could come again tomorrow morning. We also have recorded this, and we will have this on our website. So our families are able to access this information and go back and have some of their questions answered. We have a family survey that we will be distributing next week. And part of those questions are those things that we just talked about. Your feedback. Again, if we cannot return to normal school, your feedback on the plans that we presented today, knowing that we would be at the mercy of the CDC guidelines, ultimately at the Michigan Department of Education, and perhaps an executive order from the governor. And also your interest in having your child either come back to school or potentially stay within a remote learning environment, because that will certainly impact how we train teachers, how we build our classroom schedules, all those kinds of things. We're not expecting you to commit fully at this point in time. These are for planning purposes. We know that your situation can change, as can any of ours. Obviously, if on January 1st of 2020, if you had said to any of us, hey, March 13th is going to be your last day of school, and we're not going back for the rest of the year, we would have said, no way, you're out of your minds. That could never possibly happen. And yet here we are. And so we know that things can change in a heartbeat, and that we need to be able to move nimbly and swiftly and make changes. So that survey will ask you a number of questions about your situation right now, your feelings right now, your needs right now, and then we will begin our planning from there. We will survey you again probably in mid-July and see what things have changed, and then certainly then again in early August, so that we have some solid plans in place for the start of the school year. We have developed a Classroom to Cloud webpage, even separately from our Cloud Learning page, where we're going to continue to provide updates to all of you. So information that we have, as Kyle mentioned, around food service, as we begin to develop our transportation plan, as you need to become aware about our policy and procedure changes around things like visitors in the building, our health screening protocols, our communication plan. Those information pieces will all be able to be found on our Classroom to Cloud webpage. So if there's questions, we will certainly email them to you via school messenger, or obviously now there's a text feature. If you've not yet signed up and you're a West Bloomfield parent, I suggest that you opt in to get your text messages. You can get all of your updates on your phone now rather than to your email. And so I would think that that would be something you might want to do. We will make sure that you are in the loop and that you have the opportunity to provide feedback to all of us. You know, we also would be remiss if we didn't recognize that this can be a really tough pill to swallow. I think that all of us have felt like we could do this for a period of time. You know, we could manage at first 2 weeks, and then we could manage a month, and then, okay, we can get to the end of the school year. But now we are facing the potential of not returning back to normal school in the fall. And so I saw a lot of frustration that I understand in a number of comments that across, whether it was on Facebook or other media outlets, about I can't believe this is what they're thinking, and you know, this isn't fair, and you know, we don't want this. We agree. We know all of those things. As Gianna said, we would love to be able to return to school in the fall and to welcome your students back, and to be able to have large events, and to be able to pick up where all the great things that we've always been doing, just as if it was normal time, and it was March the 14th and we were back in session. But the reality is we don't know where we're going to be regionally, where we're going to be in the state, where we're going to be nationally when school resumes in August. And so we didn't do this to put a damper on your summer, or to really make this something that we are a heavy hand. We just want to be prepared. We believe fully that we need to be transparent in our thinking, that we needed to make sure that we were open to feedback from all of you, and that additionally that you understood that we weren't just going to sit back and wait to see what happened. I know as a parent, I will have 2 high school students next year. I want to know what the plan is going to be, because it's going to impact me and it's going to impact their schedules. And we have to make sure that we as a family know what that's going to look like as well. And so from both the parent perspective and as the educator's perspective, the more information you have now, the better. And we know it can change. Again, this is a framework, and we're going to continue to communicate with you and to ask for your ideas, and to probably tell you some things that maybe you're not necessarily always going to agree with or like. But we're doing the best that we can to make decisions for all of our students. So we want to make sure that we're clear that right now, if things are as we expect them to be, we would return to school as normal on August 26th. If that is not the case, then we have 3 options for learning that would meet the needs of your kids. We know that they are probably very different than you've ever thought about school, but they are really responsive to what we may be facing, just to keep you safe, to keep your children safe, which is our utmost concern, and our staff safe as well. Some things that we just can't answer at this point in time, additional things that we are considering. If you think about all the things that have changed in such a short period of time, you can imagine that what goes on in our lives is like a hamster wheel. Like we just continue to run and think, and what are we going to tackle next? So things that we just don't know. Sports, we don't know. Clubs, we don't know. After school programs, large group events such as field trips and assemblies and concerts, any of those things that really make the school experience well-rounded and often are the reason why kids come to school, or are those extracurricular activities and those other experiences. We can't answer those questions at this point in time. We don't know what the guidance will be from the CDC or from the state. We don't know how we can socially distance. We don't know whether some sports will be allowed because you can maintain social distance versus other sports that might not. And again, MHSAA will drive some of those decisions. Obviously, any direction that we get from Michigan Department of Education will drive those decisions, but those are on our radar. we don't want kids to not have other opportunities besides just academic experiences. We know that these are vital to their mental health, to their physical health, to that connection to school. And so it is we're thinking about it. We're going to make as many opportunities as we can available to students, but it is not something right now that we necessarily can answer and tell you what hard and fast what that's going to look like in the fall. But it's certainly some things that we're considering. At this time, I'm going to be quiet for just a minute, and Amy and Gianna and Catherine have been monitoring your questions and answers, and so they've kind of been grouping those that we might be able to answer now, or maybe some things that are still in the works. So Amy, you want to give me a couple of questions?
Yes, that sounds great. All right, so looking at blended learning, if that happens, what about siblings on the same day?
Yes, so we would do our very best. We've already met with our principals, and so the beauty of things like Power School is everybody's linked. And so we would not want you to have one child who attends on Monday and Tuesday and two children who attend on Thursday and Friday, and then you're trying to balance those schedules with your work or with anything else. And so yes, we would look to make sure that you had your students who attended on the same day. That requires a lot of hand scheduling. I can't tell you it'll be perfect the very first time, but we have very skilled principals who have already have been thinking about how they can change names and coordinate schedules.
And what about the Chromebook ratio for the fall, especially for elementary?
So we had a great meeting today with our technology department, and we would really like to thank our community for supporting our bond a few years ago. That has not only led to upgrades within our facilities and continued upgrades within our facilities, but also allowed us to purchase new technology. And so we have a proposal that will be going forward for approval with our Board of Education that would allow us to purchase additional Chromebooks for our students. We want to be able to provide the best quality that we possibly can that will allow them to have the most accessibility. And so met with technology today. We will be bringing a proposal forward to our Board of Education for approval for additional Chromebooks, so that we'll not be asking your children to cart the Chromebooks back and forth from home to school. And so that's really our goal, that there would be technology for them to use at school, and there'd be technology for them to use at home that was provided by the district. And so we're excited that we believe that with the board's approval, we'll be able to make that happen as well.
And the next questions are about the cloud childcare. Will there be like a max number, and that 25 per student, is that per student or would it be per family? Any ideas on that?
Well, so let me start with just max number of students. We only have so much space in the district, and so we have to be careful. So I can't, it probably at this point in time would be first come, first serve. So if you believe that that's going to be a need, then I would indicate that that's a need. We're going to do our very best to accommodate our families to make sure that they have childcare. And also we may be working within new ratios. If you participate in childcare now, you know that licensing dictates the number of adults and children in childcare. There's been some leniency and some change during this COVID experience that has allowed different ratios. But again, we have to maintain their safety. So we have to make sure that we're small enough that we're really mimicking exactly what we would do in the classroom. So that also would certainly pertain to the amount of available space we have too. So we'll do our very best to accommodate. It certainly will be dependent upon the number of families in the district who need access to childcare. Right now, the cost is $25 per child. However, I am sure that we will continue to refine that. And often, like many things, there's breaks when you have multiple children. And so we'll work with our child care personnel to determine what that might look like. I can't necessarily answer that today.
Now thinking about Plan C, which would be virtual by choice, would students still be considered West Bloomfield School District students, and could they participate or play in sports?
If they were doing remote learning, is that the question? If they
were C. Yep, if it was Plan C.
And they're current West Bloomfield students?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Yes, so yes.
Would they still stay West Bloomfield?
Yeah, it's really just, you're going to be taught by West Bloomfield teachers. You're going to have the same opportunity to participate in activities and do all those kinds of things. So the only thing that changes is where you learn, and not necessarily anything else. So yes, that is certainly an opportunity that we would give to our families.
Will masks be provided to students?
I'm going to let Kyle kind of talk about where we are. I'll just speak for just a minute that we've done a great job beginning to, as has been really the guidance that we've gotten, which is to begin to purchase and have those things ready to go when we return in the fall. But it's also been a struggle to get them. So we've been ordering for a while and they're starting to trickle in. So Kyle, you want to take that question?
Yeah, thank you, Deanna. So as far as masks, what we're thinking is that we would have them available for students. When you look at the CDC guidance, there is all kinds of qualifiers that the CDC is saying children under 2 years old should not be wearing masks. Obviously, anyone who has trouble breathing. So to require the mask would be problematic. We are thinking right now we would have them available.
Great. Moving on to the next question. How will budget cuts impact the upcoming school year?
I'll let Kyle
I can
that
take
one.
that one also, Deanna. We are monitoring what's going on in Lansing right now. And as of right now, we do not know the specific effect to our budget. They just had a revenue consensus conference last week. And as everyone has seen in the media, that there's a bit of a hole in the revenues in Michigan. So we're not sure what effect that will have on public schools. But I would recommend that you reach out to your lawmakers and ask that question. Because as we work on these plans, it would be very helpful for a school district, not just ours, for all school districts, to have that question answered so we can plan accordingly.
All right, those were the questions that I had written down. Gianna, Catherine, were there any that questions you noticed? I know we have a few that just got in the question and answer.
Yes, many of these will either be things that we are still working on, that we alluded earlier to not being able to know everything right now, and things that are still under consideration. And then there will be some things that will develop into frequently asked question lists on our Cloud Learning webpage, certainly for some of these specifics.
So I know that thank you. There were a lot of questions about individual schedules and buildings and what that might look like, bell schedules and so forth. The principals are working on it already. We've had several meetings thinking about what this might look like at the middle schools and certainly at the high school. And so as that information becomes clearer to all of us, then we will make sure that it gets posted. We will do as we've done in the past. If you remember when we started Cloud Learning, we posted a frequently asked questions document and shared that. We've been communicating very regularly with our families, either via the website or school messenger or direct updates from my office. And so we'll make sure that we continue to do that with you as well. So as we have more refinement to those master schedules or more direction from MDE or from the governor's office, then we'll communicate those changes to you so that you're aware as well. So we will save all your questions tonight, those that we could not answer either, and then we'll make sure that we put that into an FAQ document and put that on our website and let you know when it's there. So it is a lot where we're still working through all those details and certainly can't answer all those questions at this point in time. I wanted to end with just a quote for the evening as you think about where we are and where we've come and where we may indeed be when we return in the fall. This is by Coretta Scott King. Says, "The greatness of a community is most accurately measured by the compassionate actions of its members." And throughout this process, I can tell you that our members in the West Bloomfield community have been nothing short of amazing. Whether that is our parents and the support that you've shown for our teachers and our staff and your children, our community members who've sang our praises kind of far and wide about what we've been able to do in the last few months, our teachers and our administrators and our paraprofessionals and our secretaries who spend hours and hours making sure that your questions are answered, that your children are connected each day, that they're getting real, authentic instruction. I think sometimes that things that we've forgotten are that we're delivering brand new instruction, and we aren't just doing review, and it's not just packets, and it's not just kind of getting us by to finish out the rest of the school year. Your children have had the opportunity to continue their instruction and to have new learning, which has not necessarily been the case across the state. And so that has only happened because of the dedication of our teachers and our community members who allowed this to, and who have supported us and who have said, look at what we're able to do. So we've really benefited from everyone's hard work. And then finally, I have to say a big thank you to Gianna, to Amy, to Catherine, to the entire teaching and learning department. You may have seen we've done a K2 parent night, we've done a 3-5 parent night. We did a workshop for teachers last week on some additional tools with Zoom. We did a social emotional learning night. We did an early childhood evening. We've done some parent meetings where parents were at each level where you were able to interact with your building principal. We've continued to support no differently, and probably more so than even if we'd been in regular school. And the three women that you see on your screen along with me tonight have worked tirelessly and hours and literally every weekend in order to make this happen. And then certainly the cabinet as well. So from the leadership of Dr. Hill and from our cabinet, Kyle Anderson and Eric Whitney and myself, we feel very fortunate, all of us, to work in a district like West Bloomfield that it embraces progressive thinking, that allows us to take risks, that allows us to be out in front and supports our actions. And so we are lucky to be in a community like this as well, and certainly for our Board of Education too, who have made sure that we are cleared the path in order to be the best district that we possibly can be. So we will continue to communicate with all of you. We thank you for your time tonight. Please share our message and encourage, if there are others out there who have questions, to tune in either tomorrow at 10 a.m. This will be the same presentation tomorrow, or certainly we will get the recording of this onto our website. So thank you to all of you and have a great evening.